Friday, and thanks for tuning in to radiofreerhinecliff.org. In this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here with Avery Gilbert, who I've been researching on Google all morning long. Avery, congrats on your book, What the Nose Knows. Clever title. What exactly is a smell scientist?
You know I'm not Avery Gilbert of the Nose Knows.
You're not that Avery Gilbert?
No.
Well, there goes. There goes the whole thing. What the heck? So this, I'm kidding, but there, when you Google Avery Gilbert, you see your picture next to all this information about this psychologist.
So my only guess is this psychologist is not attractive.
I saw a picture
and he's like,
of him.
I'm going to really increase sales of my book. I'm going to get this other Avery Gilbert and put it next to my name. It's going to be like the mashup of the perfect Avery Gilbert.
I want the mashup of the perfect. I see. Because your facade is perfect, but the fact that you're not a smell scientist is really...
It's really a demerit.
It's a shortcoming. Right. Yeah. Well, but you do other stuff, I think.
No PhD. Just JD.
Now, JD, it's a doctor of jurisprudence. Is that what it's for? Do lawyers ever go by doctor?
No.
Could they? I mean, PhDs can choose to be a doctor. I mean, I think our First Lady.
I like where you're going with this. This could be a revolution.
Yeah, why not?
Because they have other salutations. Counselor.
Yeah.
For example.
Esquire. Is that something they use, Esquire? I love Esquire. Something about it really seems super, super cool, and reminds you of sort of like old England, which reminds you of royalty. And it's been said that you are Rhinecliff royalty. What do you make of that?
I first heard that today. I had never heard that before. I'm not sure what I could possibly have done to deserve such characterization. Okay.
Can you knight me?
I will, yes.
Really?
After the show.
Be super. And can you marry people?
Sure. That would be a great honor.
Okay, I got a couple of questions in that vein. I told you, I've never had such gonzo questions. What's a fiefdom? Yeah, I know. All right, what's the difference between a vassal and a serf? I figured the royalty would know all this.
Fiefdom?
Fiefdom.
It's pronounced fiefdom.
A
fiefdom.
Pardon me, Norm. It's pronounced fiefdom.
Oh, well, correct me if I'm Norm.
I brought my medieval studies scholar with me. Thank goodness.
Way. Really?
Moses, what's the difference between a vassal and a serf?
A vassal state is a state that still has, that usually used to be a independent nation, but is usually a certain country extracts tribute from that nation, and a fiefdom is like, let's say, like in China, they had like the emperor, and then who would give fiefdoms to all his brothers, and it's like a little strip of land which is technically controlled by the nation, but a vassal state is not technically controlled by it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, Avery, we're going to count that as your phone call lifeline. You have 2 more lifelines throughout this interview, but you can't use that one again. I'm so sorry. Somebody else told me you were the Hamlet wildlife animal rescue specialist.
Unofficial. I don't know. I think I might share that with Ida, who lives on Grinnell, who has wrangled snakes in the past. Yeah, I grew up on a farm, so you know that Tom Waits song, there's always a lot of killing you got to do around the farm. There's always a lot of animals around the farm. There's always a lot happening. There's always like birds falling out of nests, snakes in the chicken coop. So, but this comes from I think from a squirrel rescue operation when my neighbor shot a squirrel with a bow and arrow.
Oh.
And then the squirrel tried to run away and went through one of those lattice type fences. But the arrow
wouldn't let it through.
Right, exactly. So it was just kind of stuck there in the fence trying to scrabble with the arrow going through. So my neighbor gave me a call and said, what do we do? And I was like, well, I'm going to put on some sturdy gloves and we'll go over and see what we can do. So Zach and I went over and I held the squirrel while he cut the arrow, and then...
Oh my God, it's like Quentin Tarantino directing like an animal life video, an animal TikTok.
Squirrel teeth, as you may have guessed from their diet, are very, very sharp, and my little rose gloves were nothing. So
Oof.
I was not really well equipped, but I had it.
And then what? Do you have to get shots like rabies?
I did.
And stuff
I had
like
to
that?
go get. I think I just got a. I'm not sure. I don't think I got a rabies shot. I think I just got a tetanus shot. I just got a tetanus shot.
Okay. And you said you grew up on a farm in the country somewhere. Where was that?
That was in Maryland. Excuse me. Maryland. My dad had a hog farm.
A hog farm?
He was one of these like back to the land 60s guys.
Uh-huh.
And so Ruby Palmer and I have talked about this. She grew up in a similar kind of situation with, kind of part commune, in a band, people come and stay, and then it becomes this hog farm. Then I'm going to grow crops. So we had soybeans and snow peas at one point and corn. And
from a young age, were you enlisted to help out around the farm?
Yes.
Hog farms can be pretty smelly.
Yes, they can. One of my worst childhood memories is so my dad also fashions himself to be this incredible engineer. There's always anything that has been thought of, he can think of it better.
Like a MacGyver kind of thing.
Could reinvent the wheel, right?
Right.
Would take the energy to reinvent the wheel. So he had this system where the hogs would like defecate through this metal lattice. And then you wouldn't have to muck out their stalls, and it would just fall down into this abyss.
Yeah.
But then it would get too viscous to drain, and we would have to row a rowboat around it. I wonder if my family hears that. They're gonna be
Wait,
like,
what?
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
Row a rowboat through the overly viscous pig poo.
Yeah.
That lived beneath
to my child.
the.
Yeah. So I mean, it was always very, very busy. You didn't sit down, which has translated to my adulthood and drives my husband crazy that I'm like still incapable of sitting down.
Well, after 20 minutes, we can stand up if you want. Okay. Yeah, or you can stand up and we'll put on some music. So were you there your whole youth?
No, we moved when I was 8 to Pennsylvania, and that was more of like a gentleman's farm. And so there we had sheep and horses and chickens and dogs and cats, but not a real farming operation as much. We just leased the land for farming.
And so you described it as sort of a commune in the first place. And were your folks sort of leaving behind this ideal of...
Then we went into the 80s.
The 80s?
Well, yeah. Then you went into the 80s. You've got Reagan. It all changed. There were some dynamics at home. My sisters went to boarding school. I was a day student at a Quaker boarding school. And then, anyway, life changes.
Are you still a Quaker?
I'm not. I would say I identify strongly with Quaker values and Quaker beliefs, but I don't, go to meeting regularly. There is a meeting out on Bull's Head Road that I've been to a few times, but I don't go to Quaker meeting regularly.
Right. And does the family ever come along with you?
No, they've never been.
Huh. Now you've got 2 kids, is that right?
That's right.
And what are their ages?
11 and 9.
Oh, I saw the 9-year-old today at Adams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I stopped to get some stuff, and there's the 9-year-old with his dad, who gave me a whole bunch of dirt on you. I'm going to get to that later.
Okay.
No, actually, he told me to ask about the sort of country upbringing. Huh. That was the one thing. So you moved to Pennsylvania, and then what? You went to a Quaker school there. You
Quaker school.
Graduated. Wait, what was the Quaker school called?
George School.
Oh, nice.
You know it?
I do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, my friend's kids went there, and she's currently on the board of the George School.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Wonderful, magical place.
Yeah.
So, then graduated, went to college, and then moved to D.C., worked for a few years there. I mean, what do you want to know?
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Skidmore College.
Nice. My friend's kid goes there. Is having a great time. And what did you study?
I didn't. They let you design your own major. I did my own major in. I don't even remember what I called it, but it was something about environmental philosophy, environmental economics. I can't remember what I called it at all.
And how did you get interested in that? I mean, living on a farm, there's lots of environmental issues right in your face every day.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's why we had water quality issues.
I'll just keep answering the questions
and then
for you.
moving to Pennsylvania in this rural farmland area, and then the Toll Brothers come in and make these McMansions, subdivide everything into these McMansions. You have this very capitalist, consumerist culture, and to me, it seemed like the writing was on the wall that this was not sustainable. And so I was very interested in understanding the cultural roots of that in order to these grand ideas of shifting cultural values and of economics so shape our decisions in our economy. So a lot of thinking around environmental taxes, very early work on carbon taxes, bottle taxes. How do you incentivize the behavior that you want? So that's what I was interested in. And then I moved to Washington, D.C. And worked at a nonprofit called the Center for a Sustainable Economy, doing econometrics around those issues. This was back in 1998, trying to get a carbon tax. Wish we did it. Didn't succeed. Politically, it doesn't work, right? So from there, you're this idealistic college student. You think all you need is a good idea and we'll heal the world, right? And then you realize, actually, we don't just do things because they're good ideas. You make decisions based on emotion and based on politics and, not because they're good ideas. So then I switched to doing more political work in the environmental grant making area for a few years, and then went to law school.
Huh. So from that early point, what environmental dreams that you had back then have you seen actually come to fruition?
Norm, this is a very sad question.
This is a super sad question. Nothing.
No, I mean, I can tell you that how much money has been spent by environmental grant-making foundations, by billionaires to try and move a carbon tax, to try and get cap and trade, and nothing in this country. Nothing. We still subsidize fossil fuels, just nothing. Right. I don't know. There's some, on the incentive side, everybody's enjoyed solar tax credits. You've enjoyed, tax credits for efficient vehicles, the standards for cars, fuel efficiency standards. But every step forward, then there's a rollback. And so it's very sad that we've made so little progress. But you don't want this radio show to be so sad.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, it's topic number one, really, for the times we're living in. So it's not a bad thing to talk about and think about.
True.
Is it? You're like, no, please no. All right. Well, so you went to law school, and what did you specialize in? Any particular kind of law?
I didn't specialize in a type of law. Well, I mean, this actually all kind of makes sense. So, starting thinking, we just need great economic ideas to produce the outcomes that we want. Oh no, we need better politics. Okay, so we go organize in these key states that are pivotal in the legislature to getting the number of votes you need. Okay, but that doesn't work so well either. What can we do in the litigation area? Let's use the courts, right? And so one of the first things I worked on was I worked in the New York AG's office under this wonderful person named Peter Lehner, and we brought a case alleging public nuisance claims, reaching back into federal common law to bring nuisance claims against the biggest power companies for climate change, right? The courts threw it out, but that kind of case is still kind of wending its way and shifting ideas. So that was, trying to figure out, well, how do we use the courts to get the outcomes that we need to protect the environment and public safety? So I've tried many different angles on this.
Another noble idea. Now, I had Lydia Slavey here. Do you know her? Local woman, and Vanessa Bertozzi, do you know her? All these people very engaged in climate issues and environmental issues. And it just dawned on me as you were describing it. So many of them are women. Is that true, or is this just a fluke that I'm seeing that?
That's really interesting. I would love to tally it up. I've done environmental work with plenty of men. Plenty of men have, led the charge. Plenty of male, dominated grant-making foundations that do this work. But it's true that it is, I think, seen as somewhat like feminine, right? To be bringing your bags to the grocery store, to be like driving your electric car. And what is that? Because we think of it as a nurturing act, rather than a dominating
taking care
act.
of the next generation.
Right. So, yeah, this is a really interesting thought exercise on, we think of, or maybe men perceive themselves as having like this dominating, grab resources role, right? And women are more likely to, this might not be true, right? Or women, I'm just thinking, Moses and I do a lot of reading on human evolution and the evolution of different, therefore, instincts, right?
Right.
So, and women obviously often perform these nurturing roles. So that could be part of the explanation in your anecdotal observation, but we'll have to do scientific. We'll have to ask the nose scientists.
Please do. Let me know if you need help. I've got a pen and I've got a clipboard. Well, and certainly, men, the patriarchy, and here in this capitalist country of ours, they're the ones pushing back like, no, carbon credits, no, we're not cutting incentives to the fossil fuel industry. They're protecting their right to grab as much resources as possible. That seems to me like really mostly men. There's the odd sort of woman in there.
Yeah. That's probably right. I don't know. It's really interesting. And somehow what you're talking about is dovetailing with this other thought experiment that I spent some time researching and thinking about, is the desire for men to control women's bodies.
Ugh.
And, really researching back to all the ways in which men have done that over human history, and what could be, again, I'm always very interested in, I think all of our actions arise out of our way of understanding the world around us, right? Like religion and philosophy, they all arise out of some sort of context. And so I wrote this amazing paper once about how the reason why men want to control women's bodies is because they don't create offspring themselves, right? And so the only way to have this connection to next generations into the future is through controlling a woman's body, right? That's how you know that it's your heir. That's how you know that this carries your bloodline, that this baby carries your bloodline. That's how you can have this connection to the eternal and the everlasting in a way that comes more easily to women who childbear. But it was well researched, I swear. But but that dovetails interesting with this question about how we approach climate. Right?
Yeah, so, there's Greta Thunberg. Am I pronouncing that right? I don't believe so. Thunberg?
I think it's Thunberg.
Thunberg?
I think it's Thunberg. Yeah.
Thunberg. Well, anyway, Greta. Great. And she, obviously a woman, a girl, I guess. I don't know. How old is she now? She must be 18 now. But what an amazing thing she's done.
But not.
But raising...
What? But what?
Raising the profile of these important issues.
But what?
Raising the profile of these important issues. That's not nothing.
Except that it doesn't translate into anything. That's what is frustrating.
What if it changes one mind? Just one mind of some guy, let's say some guy somewhere who's like, oh, wow, I didn't really think about this. And we should not be doing what we're doing. And we're going to change with our household. I think if you change one mind with your activism, and for me, I sort of have to believe that because I'm with you. I'm like, okay, great. I'm holding this sign out in the street corner, or making these historical markers. And for what?
Yeah.
The legislation's not following suit.
Right. We have to raise awareness, and I'm thinking, I think we're all on all of our minds is the horrible slaughter in Texas and the horrible series of slaughters. And those are the same thing. Like we have a failed democratic state. We cannot make progress politically, but what we can do is make progress culturally, and through kind of raising awareness through the signs that you do, through Greta Thunberg's, if we're going to make change, we have to do it through this giant, shifting of all, what if we had the massive public health campaign about guns the way that we did about smoking? Like nobody smokes anymore. A few people smoke, I guess, but it used to be like everybody smoked, and now it's like it's just not de rigueur. You can,
and now, and I haven't paid tons of attention to this, but it seems that the Biden administration is saying like, oh, we're gonna try and reenact the gun ban on assault rifles. Yeah. And
good.
It's good. It seems like there needs to be more. Like, what about mental health? What about a whole package to address this?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, first let's get rid of the assault weapons, and of course we still need to address mental health. And address, this is Kellyanne Conway was on Trevor Noah a couple of days ago. She was amazing, by the way. Not a huge fan of her personally, but she was absolutely a genius, and she ran circles around Trevor, who I love. But I do agree. Like, there is a problem with not recognizing when people are struggling and isolated, and therefore they're going to act out in a violent way. And we should be able to we should have communities set up to identify those people, right? That doesn't. Number one, you need an assault weapons ban, and we need gun control. Okay, I don't want to see like armed schools and like.
No, that's so absurd.
But this is true, and this is a big theme of mine, and comes back to why I guess I'm affectionately. I hope it's affectionately dubbed the Queen of Rhinecliff. What if it's not affectionate? But anyway, assuming it's affectionately dubbed Queen of Rhinecliff, it comes down to like, I am devoted to community. I believe so strongly in it for exactly this reason. The reason that I feel it's safe to send my kids to school is because every teacher in there knows their name. Every aide knows their names. Every aide knows every kid's name, right? And that is how you can identify who's falling through the cracks, who needs help. You get bullied on the bus, and what happens is that kid is called in, their family is called in, and we start seeing like who's needing help. You're not bullying because you're like a bad, evil person. I don't believe in evil, which comes to my current work, but you're bullying because you feel bad about yourself, right? And if we can lift each other up and build a community that can nurture one another, we can. I truly believe that we can avoid those situations, right? But that's a massive lift. So you need an assault weapons ban because not every community can do that, right? Which comes back to, if you keep extrapolating this out, well, why can I be Queen of Rhinecliff? Well, I can be Queen of Rhinecliff because, like, why can I devote so much time? Why can Matt devote so much time? Why can you devote so much time to community? It's because of your lifestyle that you like. Not all people who are working like minimum wage jobs have time to put into their communities, right? And so we're self-destructing as our economic system creeps into this like massive wealth disparity. We're self-destructing our communities, and we're self-destructing our ability to identify these potential mess.
So you're sort of speculating it's sort of a noblesse oblige of the upper classes, and that's why there's so much giving in a richer community like this.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm saying that that's not a noblesse oblige, but I believe that. I believe you are privileged and you have a responsibility. I do believe that, but I'm speculating that without like labor unions, right? Without the things that we have, that just, you don't have to be. It's not like you have to be wealthy to do these things. Just to have not be working two jobs. Then you can have barbecues on your block. You have to have some free time. You can, right. Yeah. Right.
And the people who have free time or living a certain kind of lifestyle that's usually made possible by higher income and not needing to work 2 or 3 jobs to support a family.
Right.
Oof.
So like everything, complicated problems with complicated solutions. But assault weapons ban now.
Yes, please. And you said earlier you said you don't believe in evil.
I don't. I strongly don't. That's something that is a trope. That I think, this is the kind of thing that can get me in trouble. But I think
with whom
is a trope.
We'll discuss that after the mics go off. Good face.
I got plenty of opposing counsel out there.
Yeah.
But that is a trope that can be used, I think, to abdicate responsibility of the state and communities for the behaviors of our community members.
It's evil,
in it, right?
Evil incarnate.
You know why that 18-year-old went? He's evil. There's just nothing we could do about it. Just evil.
More
That's
like
just
they
evil.
need an exorcism than
and
extra
it's
help.
And to see like Marvel and this is where my cultural knowledge like comes to a screeching halt. But Marvel, right? Moving away from the idea of like there's a good guy and there's a bad guy, right?
Like
We're all
complicated. Like
we're all
like DC.
we're all complicated. Okay, DC is what I'm saying. I don't have any cultural knowledge. We're all complicated characters, right? And your behavior arises out of a complicated background, of which there are many actors. So, right. So it really drives me bananas when the state, most of the work I do currently is on behalf of people serving life sentences for crimes they committed as children. So most of those people, right, the reason they're serving a life sentence is because they committed homicide. Okay. Now, horrible crime. You can never bring somebody back.
Right.
And often the state says, well, because we can never bring that person back, you don't get your life either. Well, guess what? That crime was committed out of a complicated series of circumstances. A lot of it being the prevalence of guns on the streets in the 90s. A lot of it being, lack of access to childcare for families. Like there's a complicated set of reasons why horrible things happen. And the more retributive that we are in our penal system, the less we're acknowledging the humanity of each person and the collective responsibility for these
right
acts.
But revenge and retribution is sort of the taste that Americans really
it's like want. It's a little shot,
maybe just humans everywhere.
Yeah.
Oof. Well, so what exactly is the work that you're doing now that works with these people, presumably?
So I started representing people in New York with my dear friend and co-counsel, Isa Kohler-Hausman, who's an amazing, incredible person on her own, but she got me into this work, who were serving life sentences and being denied parole, and they'd committed their crimes when they were very, very young. And we did a series of individual cases and then realized this is a really systemic problem. And we had the Supreme Court hand down 3 different important decisions on the proportionality of punishment for juveniles between 2010 and 2016 that gave an avenue to bring Eighth Amendment claims, which is the cruel and unusual punishment. And so we persuaded this fancy law firm, Cravath, Swaine and Moore, to join us in bringing a class action lawsuit in New York on behalf of all of the people in the state who are serving life sentences for these crimes. And then did the same thing in Wisconsin with the ACLU of Wisconsin and some law firms there.
How did you convince this huge law firm to take up that charge? That sounds like, I think about Christo and Jean-Claude, who wrapped the Brandenburg Gate and put in the gates in Central Park. I'm like, yeah, the art's nice, but really that you wrangled the bureaucracy. That's
the gates.
That's the trick.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, the art's nice idea, whatever. But how did you convince people to do that? So how?
Well, that was really one of our clients wrote to them actually and started to convince them, and then we had some meetings, and my co-counsel Isa is extremely kind of a difficult person to work with, but extremely persuasive. And they want to do pro bono work, right? They want to do pro bono work. They want to have their associates working on cool, fun things, and that's going to convince them to keep staying there, right? So they can work on the boring things like insurance contracts or some, the normal boring stuff you do at a corporate law firm. So they have an incentive to do it. And all lawyers in New York have an obligation to do a certain amount of pro bono hours.
How many hours a year? I assume it's a yearly.
That's a good question. I don't actually know. I do so much of it. I never actually look at what the minimum is. It's ridiculous. All right. I don't know. I don't actually know.
Good for you. That's
how many
wonderful.
hours it is, but there's an obligation to do it.
All right. So back to that. They took up the charge, Cravath, Swaine and Moore. And what happens next?
So then we have to identify plaintiffs, right? So this is the tricky part where you want someone who's got the life sentence, but not for something so bad. So you have these really horrible conversations. You're like, well, I don't know. I did light the body on fire, right? You gotta watch
right.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. This is like the gallows humor that you have to get into when you do this work, right? Because it's all like super dark.
But also the disgusting, equation of the publicity. How's this going to play out in the court of public opinion?
Right. And it's so interesting because the cases that these hinge on, right, is like Graham, which the court there said that even those convicted of the most heinous crimes are capable of change. But when we're trying to find a plaintiff, we don't actually want the most heinous crimes. We want somebody who's in for felony murder. Felony murder is, I went to rob someone.
Right.
One of the guys I was with had a gun. They shot somebody. And if you are in that situation, then you're in as well as if you did the crime yourself. So that kind of situation is what we were looking for, because we thought that would.
It's a better look.
It's a better.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all a dark look, man.
Sorry, yeah.
It's all a dark look, right? This is like the most unsympathetic population.
Right. Who, lawyers or the people?
Well, great question. Thanks, Norm. Yeah, both.
And so you found, how did you even find people? I mean, I guess, are there records you can somehow?
Right. Well, I started because Issa was working for a woman who was doing, just getting assigned cases. And she ended up representing a person named Dempsey Hawkins and won a couple of cases on the Eighth Amendment grounds. And then if you win a case and get somebody out of prison, you get letters. Okay. It's all word of mouth within.
Gotcha.
Right. And so you got lots of letters. So that's how we had to operate at first because we don't have access to information. But once we sued the state, then you get what's called discovery. Then we say, we want to see all of your parole decisions. We want to see a list of like who all you have in there. And then you can look them. And then you can look at the decisions and see what their crime was. Otherwise you're just all you can get is on their website, you can get names and like what their crime, generally category of crime. And then you can try to Google it. But yeah, so that whole process is quite lengthy and not very fun.
Right. So you got enough people. And was it did you say it was a class action?
So the one in New York is actually still not even certified, unbelievably, even though it's been going on since 2016, because the judge here, this is in the Southern District of New York Federal Court, didn't want to deal with whether or not to certify the class, which is a whole other conversation about how you certify a class. You have to have, typicality, commonality, claims have to be common. But in Wisconsin, we had a judge in the Western District of Wisconsin, our judge there was wanted to move very quickly. We got certified very quickly. And then the problem is what the state does is they try to moot out our case by releasing people. So they release all of our plaintiffs and then we get to find new plaintiffs. So it's just this unending cycle.
Because the state is afraid they're going to have to put out
right. They're like, we don't want to deal with this lawsuit. Let's just let these 3 people go. Okay.
Which, from your point of view, is sort of a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag.
It's like, that's great. These people got out,
clients,
but
right?
We needed them for our case.
Which is which is why. So I also teach a clinic at Yale Law School called the Strategic Advocacy Clinic, and we teach through these cases. And one of the interesting things about doing these cases is when you're like a movement lawyer, right? Like you're doing impact litigation where you have some goal in addition to your own individual clients. Most of the time a lawsuit is like this client, you're just individual client and what their interests are. But you still, as a lawyer, have an ethical obligation to always put the interest of your client ahead, right? So, of course, we're thrilled when they are released and we do everything we can. We support them in their parole. We do everything we can to make sure that they are released, even though it just sets us back to square one. We've got to do it again.
Yeah. And so is that where you are now? Like a couple of steps forward and a step back? And
yeah, I mean, it's just litigation is extremely slow. It's also, complicated area politically. And so we're always looking at what the wins are. Looks like we've got a good chair of the parole commission in Wisconsin, but the governor is going to be challenged this November. We might lose that person. In New York, we've made a lot of headway in, I think, revealing the extent to which reform is needed, and we'll probably get there.
And so is that a separate push, pushing for reform outside of this class action suit?
That's a great question. So that is why, this is so interesting. So there's also, a number of organizations, Release Aging People in Prison is one of them. There's parole justice. There's a number of organizations that are pushing politically and had a couple of bills up. And so we're trying to, not work at cross purposes, but to make sure that what we're doing is not interfering with what they're doing and that we can work together. But this, it's politically, it's just tough to do anything for violent felons, like even if they're juvenile at the time of the crime. Like it's just politically, it's very tough. So, so we're still working our way through the courts, and the litigation provides the political cover, right? That maybe the political actors want to do, but it's hard to reach.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, God bless you for doing the good work. And you work for an organization, it's a nonprofit. But let me just ask, supposing the class action suit goes forward, you're going to get damage. There's going to be, whatever is called punitive or financial. You get a settlement and your people will get some money.
Nope.
Nothing.
Nope. No money.
Really?
There's no money in prisoner litigation.
In what criminal?
There's no money in this, in that we cannot ask for damages for very complicated reasons, but we can't get damages. All we can get is injunctive relief. If we were asking for damages, we would get kicked out of our court, our federal court. So we have to ask for injunctive relief, which is relief saying we're not going to continue doing this unlawful thing we were doing.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
And then we, in theory, get paid attorney's fees because for civil rights 1983 cases, you can get attorney fees.
And where do they come from, the attorney's fees?
Taxpayers.
Okay. Well, I'm happy my tax dollars are going to that. Okay. And what is the nonprofit that you work for that's allowing this wonderful work to happen?
This is through the Strategic Advocacy Clinic at the law school. At Yale Law School. Okay.
And does it have a name?
Yeah, the Strategic Advocacy Clinic at Yale Law School. So we're under the universities, whatever.
Okay. But you're also affiliated with Engage Strategies.
So that is another company that I work with. That's my sister's company. And that comes out of mostly of the policy work that I did before law school, although they kind of dovetail too. And that work is working with foundations to translate their policy goals to the political realities in various states. So it's not issue specific. It's, for example, I've done economic development tax incentives. Are they good for the state? Are they not good for the state? How do we make sure they are good for the state? Healthy lunch reform, juvenile justice reform, all sorts of different policy issues. And of course, again, as always, many on climate change. So that's a totally different branch of work from the litigation. So how do I do all these things? I don't know.
Yeah, and still rule over your fiefdom. The fiefdom hamlet of Rhinecliff, your majesty.
I'm the match striker. I'm just like constantly striking matches and trying to light fires. I'm just like a giant fire starter going around.
And that's great. Good for you. We touched a little bit before on what difference one person makes, and you do this. It's like, to what end? So you stand on the sidewalk with a sign, or you make some art on a political issue. Towards what end? But striking a match, you don't know. And this is one of the reasons that It's a Wonderful Life is my favorite piece of art ever, because it's about, this movie, right?
It's a Wonderful Life. I actually have never seen it, but I've heard many people talk about it, so I know.
It's about this regular guy. He worked for the building and loan, and he wishes that he'd never been born. So he gets his wish, and they go back, and you see him, and he was just a regular dude. And it's like, no, here's what happened. You weren't there to save your brother. Every man in the battalion died. You weren't there to fight old man Potter. He bought out the town, and now it's like just the Wild West with gambling and prostitution. Your regular life was not there, and everything changed.
Yeah, I know the premise. I've heard it. I love it.
It's an amazing premise.
But I always think about this with regards to Zach, my husband, who led just like a very simple life before I came and complicated it in massive ways. You just be like reading a newspaper and going out to see plays every night.
That's what he was doing?
Yeah, that's what he would do. Yeah. That's what he would probably just like read, go see some plays, pick up garbage.
But he
totally happy, and then it just made his life very difficult.
Did he work? Did he have a job?
Yeah.
Reading and going to plays.
Yeah.
Was he a theater critic?
No, he just likes the theater.
He what?
He just likes the theater.
And does he?
Anyway, I just wonder what the other story is of It's a Wonderful Life. What if things were better if I wasn't born?
Yeah. You know, that's a great premise. I want to make that movie. It's so wonderful. I wish I'd never been.
I wouldn't have this guy over here who's pretty amazing.
You weren't here to stop that, and things got much better. Yeah, you old curmudgeon. All right. Well, so how did you meet this guy whose life you needlessly complicated, or complicated for the greater good?
Zach,
we'll never know.
We worked together. He was my paralegal when I was at Boy, Schiller and Flexner, a fancy law firm.
Boy, Schiller and Flexner.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And Zach and I worked together on a case involving Mexican railroads. And I just noticed that when he would come into my office, by the way, he never drank coffee. He only started drinking coffee so that he could come to the corner store more. But he just, no, seriously, that's why he drinks coffee. He just gets coffee here and then walks over, throws it out, because he just wants to chat with Chris. That's really what it's all about. But, and he would just get his mint tea and sit at my desk, and I would be like happy for a few minutes because he would make me laugh. And then he told me he was going to move. He was leaving the firm and he was going to go to Bosnia and be a journalist. And my heart just dropped. And that when I was like, oh, I'm having an emotional reaction to this person. The idea of this person leaving my life. I must care about them.
And you seriously not realized that until then?
No, I hadn't until they said he was going to.
Because you're keeping it professional.
Well, I was in the middle of a separation for one thing.
Oh, okay. That helps.
But I don't know. I don't know. It's just like hadn't entered my mind. I think because I was in the middle of a separation. So I was thinking about getting out of relationships, not getting into relationships.
Right.
And so it just didn't seem.
So what happened next? You like fell on your desk crying,
so then
you
actually,
can't
this
leave?
is actually very funny to this story because you guys, Matt was like, tell me a little something about yourself for this blurb. And I just wrote back, no. So what happened was this firm, what I'd been working at for an embarrassing number of years, they're like, we need your bio for the website.
Oh, I've got your bio off the website right here.
I would not write a bio because I don't like writing about myself or thinking about myself in reflection, which is probably one of my many personality flaws. The first of which is lack of time management. But and so I just didn't do it. And then finally, like, it just got like moved up the ranks of important people being like, you know, you have to do your bio. And then Zach was in my office. So I got one of these mean emails with like the red exclamation mark next to it. And I said, oh, they really want me to do this bio. And Zach said, I'll do it for you. And so everybody, you know, these like young associates, they have just like a paragraph. Zach did like 3 paragraphs about me and all the cases I worked on. And I sent it in and everybody was happy. And then I said, I should take you out to lunch to thank you. And he's like, how about dinner?
Good for him. So he was crushing on you at that point?
I guess so, yeah.
Is your dad boy, right? Yeah. Moses probably heard this story before.
Have you heard this story?
No. Don't ask any follow-up questions, mister.
Oh, no. And then Zach got the full treatment. So we met in Fort Greene for dinner. And we went to a restaurant in Fort Greene.
Which is where you were living at the time, I'm guessing.
Yes. No, it was where he was living, actually. I was living in Park Slope. And he was living in Fort Greene. But we met in Fort Greene Park. And we went to a restaurant. And then Zach got the full... Like, there was no secrets here. I think I unscrewed a light bulb. I asked him to turn the music down. I changed tables several times, right? And so he knew this was not going to be like an easy relationship.
You unscrewed a light bulb in the restaurant.
Yeah.
I've done that all the time.
Thank you.
I'm like, sorry, this is way too bright.
This is not aesthetically pleasing. I can't just eat food here. See? Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, right. It's a little bit of overstepping the bounds of patron propriety, but I don't always care about that. So you had a nice, beautifully lit, beautifully lighted dinner in some restaurant in Fort Greene, and just the perfect seat, none of the imperfect seats.
Yeah. And then the energy was there, and I was like, "Oh, this is something." You know?
Energy was there. Mm-hmm. So keep in mind, there's youth here. How did that date end?
It ended with some subterfuge. So, Zach, knowing that I love plants, said, "I started a garden on my roof. You should come see it." Okay, there was no garden. It was an empty window box with not even a seedling. And then he made a move.
And then what?
And then he made a move, and then it was all.
And that was it.
Yeah, and that was that. Yeah.
So between the date and his visit to this garden on your rooftop, you're like running around looking for people to help. Quick, we got to like plant some peppers.
I don't know what he did. It was his subterfuge.
Oh, it was his.
Oh yeah. He's like, you should come to my garden, come to my rooftop because I planted a garden.
And he had not.
I'm a big sucker for all things plants. So.
And do you have a garden now? Here, I do. In your fiefdom?
Yes.
Do you have serfs or vassals who are?
No, I do all of the.
You do.
I do. One thing
don't you have two? Aren't there two serfs who live with you in your house?
Moses did help me mulch some plants this year. Moses helps with things. Moses actually enjoys going. We have a plot in the community garden. And Moses helps there too. And
a community garden. Now there's a move afoot to make sort of a park here in Rhinecliff. I understand you're on the Rhinecliff Park Committee.
Yeah. So we have this little park here that has been long neglected, that nobody goes into because the park is sending messages to get out. Right?
And it's across the street from where we are now.
If you go in it, like the kudzu might like grab you and keep you there forever. That's the vibe you get from this park. It has just one sign in it, a large sign that says "No household garbage" over the trash can. So we've affectionately dubbed it the "No household garbage park."
If you need a plaque, let me know.
Yes, we do need a plaque. Actually, that came up.
Oh, God.
Norm, you would have loved this. Okay, so we're at this meeting about the park, and only the haters come out, right? Everyone else is like, "Oh, good, we're going to fix up the park. Great. I don't need to go to a meeting about it. Just fix up the park, right?" But then people are like, "Don't fix up the park." They all come out. They're like, "But the precious mulberry tree, the U is a million," whatever. So, but we did say like, "Oh, it'd be so nice to have a historic marker in this park. It used to be a building. We could talk about the history of Rhinecliff. There's no other real marker about the history of Rhinecliff." And then a woman said, "Yeah, like the one right in front of," because at the library, like the one right in front of this building, Leslie and Jeff's.
On gender wage disparity.
Yeah, she actually thought that was real.
Well, the facts and figures are real, and the problem is real.
The location is real.
It's just the state was not involved in the production of that.
So you really helped us here.
Oh, that's funny. So what's going to happen with this park? It's right now. There's a parking lot there.
Well, it's a parking lot in like a little green space. We're just trying to make the green space more enticing for, I'm really dedicated. Yeah. So, yes. So people don't like change. Do you know that?
I've heard tell of such a thing.
Okay. People don't like change, and they definitely don't like change that they don't feel like they're in control of. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I ended up with a consensus to work with what we already have, prune back what we have, and fix the benches, and maybe do a stone wall that people can sit on. So it's good. I think it ended up in a good spot.
Right.
But mostly people wanted to feel included in the decision-making process and didn't feel that they were, but not understanding that we have no government. We're not a political.
Right.
Right. We're just
people.
We're just having
citizens.
A conversation, right? We don't.
Yeah.
Nobody can go and do it without. But anyway.
Nobody can go do it without what?
Well, without going to the town. Like the town is the one who has control. So we're going to go to the town and make a request.
Well, cheers. Let's just toast. Here's to your work, your activism, your hands-on queening of the fiefdom of the Hamlet. Let's just call it the Hamlet. And what is this drink that you brought?
Oh, I brought a rhubarb, tequila, lime, and vermouth. It has dry vermouth, tequila, and rhubarb.
It's really good. It's just one of the best cocktails I've ever had on this show.
So glad you enjoy it.
And does it have a name?
Rhubarb Joy.
Rhubarb joy.
Rhubarb joy.
Wow.
Rhubarb refresher.
Rhubarb.
Rhubarb refresher. I got the rhubarb from the community garden yesterday, so it's very fresh.
Wow. And then how do you prepare the rhubarb? You muddle it?
I just make a syrup, so, boil it with, like you would a jam, sort of, like boil it with, but with more water, so rhubarb and sugar and water, and boil it into a syrup, and then strain it, and then add it. It's very simple. And then
once you do, what do you do with the bits of rhubarb that have been brought out of this stew?
Leave it in a strainer on your kitchen counter so that your poor husband, who could have had an uncomplicated life, can have a more complicated life trying to figure out what to do with the rhubarb pulp that's on the kitchen counter.
And the fruit flies.
Right, exactly. And then maybe it'll attract fruit flies, which will become a long-term problem that you can continue to bother you and complicate your life for months. Like, you could turn one small complication into a many months complication.
And do you do that in all arenas of your life?
On a regular basis, I make things. Oh, yes. Any simple thing I can complicate anybody's day.
Can you? Well, you have not so far complicated my day, but there's like 8.5 minutes left.
Good. My neighbor called me. So my neighbor mistook the name for the company Engaged Strategies for Emerging Strategies, but not Kristen. She's Kristen and Derek. They have an 11-year-old named Henry, and we love them very much. But she calls me Emerging Strategies because every day I'm like, you'll take a simple plan, like Henry will come over and play, and they'll be like, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna do that, and if you can do that, and if you can get there by then we can all do that, and it will all become much more complicated. Emerging strategies. Let's go on a bike ride, climb a mountain.
But there must be things in your life that you simplify.
No.
Look at you, blank stare.
Never.
All right. I want to go. I've got some questions I want to ask, but we got some time. I want to go back to the not believing in evil thing.
Okay.
Because it sounds like you were raised Quaker-ish, or you just went to a Quaker school.
I wonder if that's part of it, right? So Quakers believe that there's that of God in everyone, right? And that's why you don't have an intermediary between you. There's no priest. Although there are some, I understand there are some Quaker sects in Indiana that do have this intermediary, which I don't understand how that jives with basic Quaker beliefs. But
is it intermediary or just sort of an organizer of the meeting?
So the organizer of the meeting is usually the elders, right? There's elders, and they don't have any hallowed special new communion with God. It's much more, it's just much more clerical, right? It's not, they're just simply the elders who will start the meeting just by shaking. You start a meeting by shaking hands. You start and end a meeting by shaking. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
We're in a meeting.
Yeah.
And then you'll have groups of elders in the community, or they don't even have to be that elders will form clearness committees to make various decisions, like a clearness committee if you want to get married, and they'll talk you through questions, but there's no sense that one individual has divine authority to do anything, right?
The book. What about the Bible? Is that a part of Quaker?
It varies by your community, by which friend's house you belong to, but many don't. Have any. There's no book sitting there with you, right? The idea is that you reflect and you can be moved by God without any words. But then individuals, it does come from a Christian heritage, right? So, but also the idea there's that of God in everyone. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but you can have Hindu Quakers. You can actually, right? You don't have to ascribe to Christianity to be Quaker.
That's interesting. I never thought of that.
That's how I understand it. I'm sure there's probably others in different Quaker sects.
How does this relate to the question of there is no evil?
Well, if there's that of God in everyone, then there's no I just don't believe don't believe that there's such thing. It also can go back to a very naturalist view, right? A very scientific view of the evolution of what would you even say evil is? Right? If you're thinking about it in terms of human evolution, right? We're just a bunch of chemical reactions, right? We're just like molecules, right?
But sometimes the chemicals are off.
So,
true, and the neurons are firing in a really bad way.
Yeah. There can be very dangerous people that shouldn't be let out of prison.
And it's easy for people to say, well, that's evil. The chemical imbalance.
But evil is a moral judgment, right? Not a biochemical judgment.
It could be a moral judgment based upon a biochemical problem.
I don't think so.
Oh,
I think you can say, like, look, this person cannot control their behavior. They're a sociopath because of whatever series of situations going on in their brain and environment. But that you can say that person is a sociopath and therefore cannot conform themselves to behavior that's required to live a law-abiding life. Or they could be a sociopath and be able to conform their behavior to a law-abiding life. That's totally possible. But evil is a moral judgment, right? Evil is the idea that there's some other force beyond, right, our own.
Right, but I guess my point is, like, people who say things are evil.
Oh, you think they may be?
Often those things are, biochemical imbalances or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I agree with you.
Right.
I don't think there's evil. I think it's it's an easy thing to pin a lot of woes on instead of actually.
Easy. Exactly. And then it also means you don't have to take responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just some evil act that somebody else did.
Yeah.
I have my thoughts, as they say, my thoughts, deeds, and actions have no
thoughts, deeds, and actions.
Yeah.
Thought, you said, what did you say before? You said a thought exercise. So was that the phrase that you used?
Oh, yeah, probably.
And you use that twice. I've never heard that. Do you do this a lot? Thought exercises as you're going through your day, sort of like coming up with conundrums?
Well, Moses helped. Moses always gets me on some thought exercise, okay?
That's the
often
best.
Things like, what would have happened if, this or that war hadn't happened? Or what if we had never waged war on the indigenous peoples of the United States? What would our world look like, right? So you just go down these alternative history paths. That's one way of thinking it, right?
And Moses, he's here right now. You posted something on YouTube of him singing. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, boy, that stuff was gorgeous. It was so beautiful. Your voice is so beautiful, and your singing is amazing. Is he enthusiastic about pursuing that art form that he's so amazing at?
Moses, are you enthusiastic? Yes. Moses loves to sing. The thing is, he doesn't necessarily love to perform, right? So anytime you come by our house, you'll find if Moses is happy, Moses is singing. They're just like the same thing, like breathing is singing. But, and our neighbor is actually the one who suggested that Moses take voice lessons because Moses was like playing out in the yard and singing. And the neighbor was like, your son has this beautiful voice. You should give him music lessons. And so we did. But if that translates to a career, I don't know.
Yeah. Huh. What a blast. And does your other kid enjoy singing or anything like that?
No. Clem loves soccer and all sports.
Right.
All things movement and action.
Uh-huh. That's nice.
Clem is also an absolutely remarkable person.
But just happens to not be here tonight. And
happens to not be here. Probably in the grocery store telling Zach everything to do because Clem is the boss, right?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Clem is like, I was like, okay, don't, make sure Daddy gets this and that. It's like, okay, I'm going to write it down. And we'll come up with a plan about how we're going to get everything. And yeah, Clem could run your life better than you. Just
well, that's not saying much, but so I'm going to just
definitely could run my life better than I do.
I'm just going to agree with you. All right, you had a couple more questions here. Your country girl, you said, who's cooler, Dolly Parton, Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, Tammy Wynette, or Bobby Gentry?
Hey, growing up on a farm doesn't mean I listen to country music. Okay.
Oh. Wow. Well,
not same.
I stand corrected.
Not same, but I do love Dolly.
All right. Who's a better rock vocalist, Courtney Love or what's her name from The Pretenders? Chrissie Hynde.
I don't know Chrissie Hynde. I'm going to go with Courtney.
Oh, that's right. You said that you're not really attuned to cultural
No, that's
stuff.
not. I mean, just in certain areas. Like Courtney Love, that's my people, right? Like, yeah.
That's your people, Courtney Love.
That's I grew up, 90s. Come on. Yeah.
Courtney Love. Well, who were the other great female rock vocalists from that era?
Oh.
Or, just any rock vocalist.
rock vocalist
from that era.
that in the era that I don't know. It's funny. I don't really think about like vocals as much as I'm a like a rhythm sort of person. I don't know. Let's do a lot of Sarah McLachlan. I don't know. I guess that's a little later.
Sarah McLachlan. All right. Well, we're out of time. We ended on that ridiculous note. Thank you so much, Avery Gilbert, not the smell scientist. Avery Gilbert.
We should plug the 90s at 9 now that we just talked about
90s at 9. Yeah.
At 90s at 9 at 8.
90s at 9 at 8
Kate
tonight.
Cox, Colleen Peterson. Don't miss it.
Yeah, right here on radiofreerhinecliff.org. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this. Thank you so much, Avery Gilbert, for being here. Thanks to Patricia and Matty for making it happen. Everybody have a great Friday. And wait. Come down to Rhinecliff. It's First Friday. There's a wonderful... Ratatouille. And it's always benefits somebody. Who's it benefiting tonight? The Grange. All right. Happy weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.